more and more we're starting to see these snow blowers that no longer have the Tecumseh engines on them, but instead they have these new Powermore engines by MTD. Chinese made engine. And the big question that I had, probably a lot of other people had, was how dependable are these things? Well, I'm sure that's up for debate, but I'm starting to think that they're fairly dependable. Although from time to time, if you don't take care of the carburetor with some fuel stabilizer or even good quality fuel, I for one use only ethanol-free, highest grade fuel that I can get my hands on, and my engines run pretty smooth and for a long time with minimal maintenance. But every once in a while somebody comes in and they have a problem, they can't get it started. So I've got to work on a couple of these, and it's almost always a carburetor issue. So right now we're going to be working on a MTD Yard Machine 24-inch snowblower. And another thing I found out about these carburetors is that they, if you need to rebuild them, I'm finding a rebuild kit is something like $28 online, but a new carburetor is about $37, $38. So why put a lot of time and effort into rebuilding a carb when you can just replace it? And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. We'll get this old carb off and get a new carb put on. Alright, to get started on this, we need to start taking some things off the top of this engine. Of course, this being a Chinese made engine, it has metric tools that you need to use. So we're going to start off by taking off the cover over the muffler. So we got two bolts here. We got a bolt here, and the tricky ones, this one's not so tricky, but the one below it, a little tight. So we'll start off by taking those. You know, it turns out that before I can get to the other bolt here, we got to take the plastic shroud off the belts. For example, this bolt here, a little snow there. We'll have to take this off because the plastic is actually getting in my way down here. So let's do that. More. It's loose enough I can't ratchet it out. Tight enough I can barely get my fingers on it. There we go. On the other side, I got another one here. All right. Okay, why is it catching on the other side? finesse. And now I can get to this one here. Alright, these two need to be taken out with a regular 10mm wrench. What really helps is when you have a ratcheting one like I do. Well, except you got to put it in a loosen. Well, I did say this was the difficult one to get to, only because it's in a tight spot. There we go. And there's the heat shroud, or cover with a muffler. And then down in here, we've got the tube for the primer bulb. This is the safety switch. That just unplugs a couple of wires there. We'll get to that. But now, the next step is this this whole piece of plastic here is connected all the way around, and there's a screw under the starter here that we need to get access to. So let's take that off. I see the owner must have broken the plastic here because he's got Gorilla Tape or something holding the plastic together. Okay, now this screw on the starter wins this hole. If this did not have a starter, there is a separate screw that holds this plastic piece on. So now what I had to do with the last time that I worked on one of these, this handlebar was actually in the way because I had to this whole thing has to come back this way. Handlebar was in the way. That was on a smaller unit. But let's see if I have to do that this time around. These are the actual nuts that hold the carburetor on. And you'll see that they're the studs or the bolts that stick out kind of at an angle. Ooh. Good, that's just water. Okay, let's see if I could put this camera on a tripod. I'm going to pull this off, like so. Pull this off. And get a screwdriver, pry it off. Try not to break the plastic. Come on now. we go. Now, one thing that's important to note is that this little tab here has to slide in a groove that's on the side of the snowblower here. We'll just push these tabs off the wires. And we should be able to pull this forward. Okay. Now, this tube here from the primer and this wire here for the kill switch is still connected. See, these bolts here are kind of holding this piece of plastic in, and then at the same time they're holding the tube for the primer and the ignition wires in, or the kill switch wires I should say. So that one was pretty loose right away. There we go. There we go, and that whole thing lifts out of there. Wires are gone. No, there's a little clamp holding the primer hose on the end here. You could squeeze that, slide that down the hose, and then gently, maybe not so gently, there we go, and then that whole thing comes out. In the process, we dropped a gasket, which you want to make sure to hang on to. This mechanism comes off. This is the whole carburetor at this part will slide off. Well, first take this choke lever, and you'll see it's held on over here like so. Slide it off carefully, don't bend anything. And then we can leave it on the carb for now. The fuel line here, let's pinch that off. And then the governor here, or throttle, carefully pull that spring off. And then the regular arm here, if you pull the carb partly out, let's get this gasket out of the way. A secondary gasket, don't lose that. Slide this off, and then push it up, and that releases that. We have to get another pliers and take the fuel line off. There we go. Slide that clamp up out of the way. I don't want to have to replace the fuel line if I don't have to, so I'm trying to be careful not to tear it. There it comes. There you go, and then the whole carb slides off. So again, here's another gasket. Try to save that gasket. And that gasket will go against here, like so. We're also going to be taking the tube here from the primer off of there and putting it on the new carburetor.